Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't know how many times I say that Pledge of Allegiance, and every time I'm like,
Roll call.
forget the words. Don't
Dr.
forget.
Pike?
Present.
Mr. Frund?
Here.
Mrs. Geyer?
Here.
Mr. Lizza?
Here.
Mrs. O'Rear?
Here.
Mr. Polakowski?
Here.
Mr. Shipley? Mrs. Smith?
Here.
Mrs. Williams?
Here.
Lily Wasman? Caleb Tax?
Here.
Before we get started, we were in executive session for some personnel matters and legal matters prior to this meeting, and Mr. Shipley did ask to be excused this evening. Citizens' comments?
We have one.
Vice Brian wasn't here.
This on now?
Yeah.
Okay. Before I start to speak, I would like to make a request of the board. Last month, when you read the censure against me, I was very quiet, very polite, and did not open my mouth or make a sound. However, when I attempted to speak, it was screaming and chaos and pounding the gavel. I'm asking you to show me the same respect that I showed you. At the public board meeting of March 9th, 2023, agenda item censure 2223-004 was read. At that time, it was then loudly and clearly stated by the board president that I said, "Who is Jason Boone?" Well, 15 months ago, I was told that Vince Amesha was out and Jason Boone was coming in as superintendent. I was on the board. I wanted to know. I ask a fair question. I do not deny that I asked that question, but listen to me very carefully. I said it in an executive session in the high school library, protected by the Sunshine Law. I'm going to repeat that. I made that statement during an executive session protected by the Sunshine Law. However, in this meeting on March 9th, in front of everybody, those on the board, those in the room, everyone in cyberspace, the Sunshine Law was witnessed and publicly violated. Now, I believe in the moral integrity of the board. Since this board has chosen to accuse one member of violation of the Sunshine Law, there is no doubt that since they witnessed it themselves, the same censure action will be taken against the person who violated the Sunshine Law. I have no doubt that the board will take action that is fair and equal. And I'm sure the attorney will have the document of censure prepared for the next agenda. I want everyone in our community to know that this board performs its duties with fairness and the values held by our constituents and our children. It is unthinkable that fair-minded elected school board members would fail to respond to the Sunshine Law violation that they witnessed on 3/9/22, done publicly. I have no doubt that their actions will prove that they are honest, have integrity, and most of all, are fair in using a census against one board member and using it against any or all when it is seen to be fit.
Do you have anything else?
I do not.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to allow Mr. Turnley to give his presentation. I need a second.
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 All those in favor? Aye.
You want me to put this up there?
Does he have that? Yep.
What was he passing out?
What are we doing? I thought you said you were bringing copies of it.
gave me two, I don't know why.
I don't have anything. I think I'm gonna sit out there. What is this? I'm not.
You're gonna give it to us.
Huh?
You want to be able to?
What is that?
Christie, isn't this the same?
It looks like it. Thank you.
That's what they're passing out.
Oh,
We have them.
is this, might be different. No, it's different.
Has others.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I think
Board members, thank you for having me here this evening. Pam just passed out to you some documentation, the actual thick audit report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. But right inside the front cover of that report is a synopsis that I give to the board each year, and that's will be the focal point of my presentation. It's dated for this evening, so if you'd be kind enough to follow along on that particular report, you'll be able to see all the numbers that I'm speaking about. You know you have the right document if you look about halfway down the first page. It says General Fund Balance Analysis. Before I go to that synopsis, just a brief comment about the audit report itself. In the very beginning of that thick audit report, and you don't have to flip through it at this particular time, but in the thick audit report, the very beginning is our independent auditor's opinion. And much like we've done in the past, we've issued for the school district what's known as an unmodified opinion. And in our profession, an unmodified opinion means that the information contained in the body of that audit report is presented in conformity with the rules and regulations of our profession, and there are no departures from that. So in layman's terms, that's a good thing. That's the type of audit opinion that you want to have for any third-party agency that requests a copy of the audit report. Now, turning your attention back to this synopsis, if you will, on the first page, at the bottom of the first page, I give you a 5-year history of the overall general fund balance. Now, the general fund, of course, is your main operating fund. That's the budget that you send to PDE on an annual basis. So if you look at the 5-year history, most notably the last 2 years, you can see this year we ended at $3,931,000 approximately, which was a slight increase over last fiscal year, about $81,000, a minor increase, 2%. When you turn to the top of page 2, I give you another 5-year history of a component of that overall fund balance that I was showing you on page 1. And this component of the overall fund balance is known as the unassigned portion. This is the portion that is able to be used for general operating purposes and is not restricted for any particular purpose. The reason this unassigned amount is important is because the state looks at this and determines what this number is as a percentage of your current year, the year that you're in's budget. And based on your budget, Southmoreland School District, they want you to be at or below, have an unassigned fund balance at or below 8%. What does that mean, Mark? Each year, the state allows school districts to raise their millage annually to an index that the state provides, an increased index that the state gives every school every year. But if you ever were in a need and had to go to referendum and wanted to raise your millage beyond that annual index that they give you, you must pass a budget where this unassigned fund balance is at or below that 8% figure. So this year, for the year ended June 30, 22, if you look at the paragraph right under that table, I did the math, and as of June 30, 22, you were at 8.5%. So you're slightly over that state level of 8%. It's almost about 172 to 175,000. And that's easily corrected by taking a portion of that unassigned and applying it for another assigned purpose, whether it be capital projects or whatever the board deems necessary. So it's an easy fix, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So it's a good fund balance. It's a healthy fund balance. You're in accordance with state regulations, but you're a little bit over their goal for raising taxes. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. On the top of page 3, I give you another table of another component of fund balance. We talked about the overall fund balance on page 1, and we talked about the unassigned portion on page 2. But when you go to page 3, you see the portion that is assigned, which is earmarked for particular purposes. And you can see a 5-year history of that. Most notably, the last 2 years, the same figure of approximately $868,000. And you can see what it's restricted for: capital improvements, cyber school tuition increases, and tax appeal refunds. Once again, you can add to any of these categories or create a new category in moving that money into the assigned category. The reason I show you this figure just briefly is you may be aware that the state did a performance audit of 12 school districts in Pennsylvania. And what was common about these 12 school districts is in each case, these 12 school districts used the Act 1 referendum exceptions to raise their millage above and beyond the index that they're allowed annually. But not only was the state looking at that, and they had that particular factor in common, but they were looking at their assigned and committed portions of their fund balance to determine, did this school have enough money socked away, for the lack of a better way of saying it, put away in these assigned and committed categories that they could have used and not have to go through the referendum exceptions that they were allowed. So what that tells us, what that tells auditors, is that, and we knew this probably 5-6 years ago, we had caught wind that the state was going to start to look in more detail at a school district's fund balance. What that purpose ultimately will be for, will it affect your subsidies? We just don't know at this particular point. But one of the main objectives they were looking at is, are these school districts putting money in assigned or committed so that that fund balance level stays, the unassigned fund balance level stays at or below that 8%, taking everything else and putting it in an earmarked thing. They may be doing that, which is what the state ideally wants you to do, but they're saying, if you do that, are you using those monies for the intended purpose? So what I've been doing for all my school districts this year is giving you a 5-year history of that to see if that money has moved in any direction. Are you actually using that money for its intended purpose? In a lot of instances, my schools were not. They had the same thing for capital improvements. They had the same thing for, say, PSERS rate increases. I'm just cautioning the board that the state is starting to look at your fund balance in a little more detail, and to make sure that when you set money for assigned purposes, that somewhere down the road, you're using those monies for those assigned purposes rather than leaving it in the unassigned pot of money. So once again, just a cautionary tale. They did a performance audit on these sample school districts, and that's one of the things that they were looking at, is the use of those assigned and committed funds. So you can see where yours are at. Below that on page 3 is, still staying with the general fund, is a 5-year history of the general fund revenues. And you can see the bottom line there. For this year, you had a $1,800,000 increase in revenues, almost 6%, $1.8 million increase in revenues over the past fiscal year. If you turn to the top of page 4, I give you the reasons for that. 2 main reasons for that increase in revenues. One was $755,000 approximately in current real estate taxes because of the millage increase that you did. And another big portion of that increase, a little over $800,000, was related to additional COVID-related federal funding, ESSERS and ARP ESSERS money that all my school districts are receiving. And I'm seeing large increases in this area, just like Southmoreland has. Those were the 2 main reasons for your general fund increase in revenues. Down below that, expenditures, just a 5-year history of expenditures. And you can see the last line this year, about $2,366,000 increase, 7.6% over last year. Much like revenues, I give you the main reasons for that. You did capital projects out of your general fund this year, capital outlay, increase of about $971,000, almost $1 million of general fund money used for capital projects, and about $925,000 increase in overall support services. So once again, those were the 2 main areas where expenditures increased. In the audit report, you'll see there I have detailed schedules in that the one that's showing on the screen. But when you get a chance to look at that, I'll refer you to pages where there's more detailed information. I'm just giving you the summary highlights of the numbers for the 21-22 fiscal year. At the bottom of page 4, how did we do as a board? Budget versus actual. The first bullet point, general fund actual revenues exceeded budget by about $280,000. So you were very close to budget on your revenues, and you were on the good side. Your actuals exceeded your budget. There's a schedule in the back of the audit report at your leisure, again, I'll refer you to page 47, that gives you a detailed breakdown, budget versus actual revenues for the general fund. I'm just giving you a summary total. That page gives you the detail. The second bullet point, general fund budgeted revenues exceeded actual. So you kept in conformity with your budget. You were under budget with actual, which again is the good side that you want to be on, by about $477,000. There's a schedule in the back, Schedule 2, and I refer you to the pages 48 through 51, who gives you line item by line item detail how we did budget versus actual. The main area that was under budget is when you did your budget, you put money aside in kind of a contingency. It's called budgetary reserve of approximately $518,000, and you didn't have to touch that. So that was the main line item that was under budget. So just calling that to your attention. The third bullet point simply tells you when you did your budget for the 21-22 year, as part of building that budget, you plan to use approximately $678,000 of your 2021 reserves to balance your current year budget. But in actuality, what happened is your revenues exceeded your expenditures in the current year by approximately $82,000. So you didn't have to touch your fund balance from the prior year. You actually grew it a little bit, as we talked about on page 1 of the presentation. Once again, just to give you a feel for how you did budget versus actual. When you turn to the top of page 5, you know, those of you that have been on the board for a while, you've heard me talk about having 2 sets of financial statements in your audit report. One is the short-term view that we've been talking about, the general fund. How did we do each year separately? How did we do budget versus actual? This table right here is a required information regarding what we call a consolidated balance sheet. You're also required to show information when you add in all of your long-term assets, your building, your equipment, things of that nature, and offset that with all of the long-term debt obligations that you have to pay for those assets. When you do that, you see on that first line where it says net position, you can see a deficit figure of $23 million. So don't let that alarm you. That's more of an accounting statement that has to be in your audit report than it is the actual circumstances. Because on page 1, I told everyone we have a $3.9 million fund balance. Now, Mark, you're telling us we have $23 million deficit. The main reason for that, as you will see later on this page, is every school district is required to show on that consolidated balance sheet that I've been talking about your proportionate share of the pension liability, the PSERS liability at the state level. And that liability by itself is approximately $34 million. So naturally, when I add $34 million of debt to your balance sheet, you're obviously going to be in the negative position. And I have schools that are smaller than Southmoreland that show deficits, and I have ones that are larger whose deficits are $150 million. It all depends on how many participating members that you have in the PSERS program. So I just wanted to explain that to you. And then about in the middle of that particular table on page 5, a much smaller fund, but nevertheless an important fund of the district, is your food service operations. And if you look at the second line under where it says food service operations, you see it says change in net position. Fancy way of saying, did we have more revenues than we have expenditures? And you can see for this year, you had an excess of $560,000 compared to last year's of $78,000. And the main reason for that, like all of my school districts for the 21-22 year, is most noted on the bottom line in this table where it says federal and state subsidies as part of the National School Lunch Program. You can see you had an increase of $727,000 over last year, and that's across the board in all my school districts. So their cafeteria funds, food service operations, have increased dramatically as compared to the prior year. Once again, a small fund, but nevertheless important here at the district. The last comments are pretty much standard comments that I've been giving to Southmoreland each year and to a lot of my school districts, quite frankly. You can see those comments on pages 6 and 7. I won't go into those in any type of detail, but I will talk just briefly about the last comment on the last page, federal monitoring. They're starting to look at the PDE is sending out auditors, contracted auditors, to look at your use of your ESSERS money. And two of the main things that schools that are having issues are if the procurement of any construction-type projects, you can't necessarily use a cooperative purchasing when you're using federal monies. That's a no-no. So you got to be on guard for that. But also, they're looking at, do you have policies on affirmative action? Do you look for, even though they may not ultimately be the winning bidder, do you look for minority business enterprises, women business enterprises, and the such, as I lay out in this paragraph? Just a word to the caution, spending of federal dollars is different than the spending of your regular general fund monies. It's just the rules and regulations of the federal grant world that we live in. So once again, just some comments for the board, precautionary in nature. And for the most part, everyone, I think those are the highlights. There's a lot of detail in that thick audit report, so I know we didn't want to go through that in detail, but I think I touched on the main points that I think of most importance for the board. But if anyone has any particular questions on what I just talked about, please feel free to ask. Yes?
I've been very confused about this. Is ESSER's money part of our fund balance as you report it?
Yes. But keep in mind, the way grants work is, did it increase your fund balance? Potentially, and I won't go into detail, but when you report ESSER's revenue, let's say you had to report $1 million of ESSER's revenue, you have to show $1 million of ESSER's expense. That's just the way accounting works. You have to have revenues offset by expenses. So does it have any effect on your fund balance looking at it that way? No, because one offsets the other to zero. But what it did allow all the school districts to do is use dollars that it didn't otherwise have out of its general fund to do expenditures that it might not have otherwise done. So all schools have, for the lack of a better word, profited, gained from these federal monies, ARP ESSERS and regular ESSERS.
What's it going to look like when that money's gone?
Well, then you're going to obviously, you're going to have to look at what you expended that money on during the ESSERS time and say, of those expenses, what are we going to keep? And if we're going to keep, you're now going to use your general fund reserves that I talked about to pay for that. So if ESSERS was $1 million and you say we needed all those services and we're going to go forward with that, then you can look to expend $1 million, and that's before inflation, out of that general fund balance that I told you had of 3.9. It could be down to 2.9 like that. So you wouldn't have any problem being under that 8% level. You'd be in good shape with regard to that. But it's a concern going forward when you're going to use that money. Its effect now, you're going to have to spend other dollars to match those services, if that makes sense.
Does anybody else have anything?
I have questions with how it is going to pertain to our budget this year. Should I wait until, because it's not actually questions for Mr. Turnley, it would be more for some of the stuff that we've talked about before. So should we wait till like the?
I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
'cause I have a presentation,
Perfect.
and I have some additional slides from the initial one, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mark.
Another slideshow, are you serious? Not over there. Good stuff. For the brewing one.
Sorry, I'm having computer issues.
You want mine?
No, I just don't know what happened, like it kind of all went away.
All right, next section is minutes.
Minutes for the March 9th, 2023 discussion meeting. One second, sorry.
Want me to say it? So we can,
Okay, we're not scrolled to where we need
the board is asked to add the minutes of March 9th, 2023 voting meeting to the voting meeting agenda.
Is there any discussion? Okay, minutes of the March 9th, 2023 voting meeting. The board is asked to add the minutes of the March 9th, 2023 voting meeting to the voting meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Okay, superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple items for tonight. First of which, I kind of wanted to give it a reminder that today's meeting, after the public comment at the end of the discussion meeting, I will do our first Scotty Spotlight, which is essentially a way to highlight some of the good things that we have going on in the district that people wouldn't necessarily know or see if they're not in our buildings. So the next item I'd like to speak about again is we have, next year is our year to do our comprehensive planning. That is required through PDE. Pretty big process, and the reason I'm bringing up to the board's attention and to the public's attention right now is there are several new components to the comprehensive planning process that you will see next year that you will not have seen in any of the prior years, specifically relating to professional development, the induction program, and a couple other initiatives from the state level. So I'll just give you a preview. The state is now requiring a 2-year induction program. And you may have heard a lot of research and publicity about the science of reading. And these are things that we are required to go ahead and make sure we have professional development for not only our current employees, but new employees as we hire them. So, like I said, it's going to be a pretty big process. It typically takes months to complete. So be prepared to hear and see invites for meetings as that comes along next year. I wanted to present to the board a list of potential graduates for 2023. As a former high school principal, I'll tell you that once again, this is potential. There are going to be some students that we're going to have to work pretty hard as an administrative team and teaching team to make sure we get them to the finish line, but we will make sure we get them to the finish line. So, but I wanted to present that to the board. And then finally, last month, I handed out basically one-page activity calendars for the board's knowledge, I guess. I know once we get to the end of the school year, there's a ton of activities in each building, and it's easy to get kind of lost into what's available for us to go to see what's going on with our kids and our teachers in our buildings. So there's one of these for each of the buildings. They're also included on board docs. So feel free to ask me any questions about these if you have any. Okay. Thank you.
Solicitor's information.
I do not have a report this evening.
Thank you. Business manager, transportation director information.
Okay, you just heard the full report of the audit, and we had a finance committee meeting this past month. So what I thought I would do is share that with the rest of you. Since that time period, I have had some discussion with the members of the finance, some of the finance committee members. They've asked me to look at some additional items. I've added those items as well as communication back and forth with Dr. Boone. I've added some additional slides, so I'm going to take you through those now, and then we'll kind of go from there. So if we want to look at the budget assumptions, Basically, we removed a employee 2903. It's my understanding that that person is going to turn in his retirement, and that position in discussion in the past years with the board was something that you had wished to eliminate from our services. So that's why I got rid of it due to attrition. Employee number 2583. Initially, in this presentation, I had put her back in ESSERS. However, you'll see in some later slides with some communication between Dr. Boone and some members of the committee, I moved her back into the general fund budget. You'll see what that looks like. The healthcare increase, right now I currently have it budgeted at 11%. We had a meeting 11% increase. We had a meeting last month with the consortium. We voted at that time not to hold the increase down to not down, to 11%. It is my understanding they were having a rate setting meeting today. I did not receive any updates on that, so it's my hope that within the next week or so, I'll have a solid number to look at. In talking with the my current transportation provider and looking at the routing, it is our intent to reduce at least one van from our transportation costs for next year. One van for the school district for a year is $44,100. The technology line items for capitalized technology replacement, I moved that to ESSERS 3. I did remove the paraprofessional that was initially put in there to this SHS for the student union at the high school. That reduced the budget by $37,156.54. I revised the prior year's receipts by under $14,000. Electricity. We have been hit, as we all have in our homes, by increasing utility costs this year. I reach out to our electricity broker at KTAX to ask him to give me some idea of where the market is going and what I could look at as far as my budget. I initially had budgeted over $128,000 for this item. He told me I could back off $95,000 to that, so now I only have an additional $33,300 in that line item. The curriculum adoption is still in ESSERS. Obviously, that's something, at your direction, I can move back to the general fund. CWCTC, I received notification that quite a few kids, more than last year, have applied. We do have a lower number, but we don't have anything firm yet. I should have a firmer number by May. And I budgeted an additional $48,200 for natural gas due to the 22-23 expenses through March of 2023. So if you look at this graph that I prepared, this is our electrical expenses that were paid through March. So essentially that's your February usage. Year to date, we have paid the staggering amount of $336,450.33 for electricity. Last year at this time, as you can see in the graph, we paid through March, once again, which is through February's usage, $162,658.22. That's astronomical. My understanding is in talking with KeyTex, the kilowatt hour price is going to be dropping next year. Markets are showing that, but like I said, obviously it's still going to be higher than what our 21-22 year was. Obviously the 2021 year is an outlier because that is the COVID years. And then you can see, so I went back an additional year, I actually went back 6 years in my historical analysis. You can see where it was fairly consistent through the 17-18, through the 2019-2020 year, as well as the 21-22 year, and then it took the dramatic spike up this past year. I also did the very same things for you to see for natural gas. Same type situation. We've made payments through March. This was actually through our February usage. So far this year, we've spent $112,338.80 compared to last year's $84,501.47. So unfortunately, just as you're seeing all the spikes at home, we're seeing them here, but they're exponentially higher because of our usage. Okay, the next is expenditures by object. I had presented this last month. I can tell you it has increased, the bottom line has increased by $18,000. Why, you may ask? One of the things that we have in the current budget is turf replacement. We had gotten a price last year. It was $401,000. We got a new estimate this past week. It was increased by $18,000. So you can see the impact of what the impact of waiting and the inflationary costs are costing us. So now the expenditures are $35,575,202 with the additional $18,000 added in. Okay, my budget assumptions. Special education funding, Governor Shapiro has suggested an increase of 6.1% in special ed funding. I've conservatively budgeted 3% increase, or $1,635,538. Basic education funding is projected in Shapiro's budget as $10,907,506. I went a little more aggressive here at $10,838,730, knowing that there are additional general fund expenditures that I can always pull from the general fund if need be to cover that and put it back into ESSERS. Ready to Learn block grant, that is one grant that has remained constant and steadfast over the last few years. Then what I did was I broke out your revenues by local, state, and federal, so that you could see how we actually fund our district. This year, with the increased millage rate that I am suggesting, and I'll get to that in later slides so that you can see how that's determined. My increase of local revenues was a total of $15,126,984. That was an increase, I'm sorry, I don't have that calculated out. The state revenues, as stated, due to the state budgetary projections, and obviously each year you have additional amounts for as your salaries rise for your Social Security and for your PSERS apportionment. That rose to $18,555,674. The federal revenues, sorry, I have it, I budgeted $1,734,544. As you can see, the Title I has basically, I bumped that up a little bit, Title I, Title II, and Title IV. That's fairly constant. ESSERS 2, I look for that to be spent because we had the rooftop units that we are having, that we spent part of ESSERS 2 and ESSERS 3 funds out of. So that basically will be exhausted. Now, we still do have ESSERS 3 funds, and that's why you see the federal revenue of $1,135,938, which includes basic items that we will spend on, such as our VIBORBs and things like that, as well as our interventionists that we still have this year. Curriculum, our items for our, that I said in the earlier slides for the technology, those type items. And we have a new access secretary who has been really working with our staff to hopefully get our access reimbursements higher. I have seen a recent increase since she has been here, so I budgeted a $75,000 amount there. The next screen will show you, some people like to look at things on a pie chart versus numbers. So what I did was I did a breakdown of the revenues. Our local revenue is approximately 43%. Our state revenue is 52%, and our federal revenue is 5%. I can tell you that that is typically higher, and it has been higher in the federal revenues for the past several years because of the ESSERS fundings. First, the CARES, ESSERS 2, and then ESSERS 3, and all the other ESSER fundings that we have received, as well as all the other districts within the state. Okay, millage rebalancing. So what happens here is when I plug the numbers into the state's CFRS program, which basically is what you have to enter your general fund budget in, send it over to the state. So working with that, because we are a multi-county district, I have to plug in, it already has the figures of the assessed values from last year in it. It already has my numbers, my tax real estate mills from last year. As soon as I plugged in the new assessed values, what it does is it looks to see what percentage of property value is in Fayette County and what percentage is in Westmoreland County. With that being said, the Fayette County, obviously, because the increased values were just about the same, because if you look at what was increased in Fayette was $523,000, in Westmoreland County was $545,000. So like I said, they were dead on, even though we have a much smaller apportionment in Fayette County. So you see the rebalanced mills was increased in Fayette County to 16.6087, which is an increase of 0.0669 before I did anything, before I said anything to the state where I need X amount of dollars to make our budget work. So that's where we were initially. So what I'm showing you here is with the rebalanced rates, without a tax increase, what would our collections look like? What could I expect to see? So if I looked at that, with our estimated collection rate is $11,858,351.15. The millage rate needed for expenses, whenever I plugged the amount in to the software program, the millage rate for Fayette is now, I'm proposing 17.4792, which is an increase of 0.8705. And Westmoreland, 95.8099, which is an increase of 4.8788, which is lower than the index, which is 5.6% for this year. And that would give us $12,568,940.49 at the estimated collection rate. Now, one of the things that you may ask is, and I hope I have it written on here, is why such a difference? I can tell you that Fayette County, why are the millage rates so different? Why are they so vastly different? Because of when the properties were assessed. Fayette County's properties were assessed in 2001. The last property assessment in Westmoreland County was in 1973. So that's why your valuations look so dramatically different, because obviously your taxes are assessed on a property value from 1973 versus 2001. That's why your rates are look so skewed. Okay. So let's see, where are we now? All right. So rebalance comparison, what I did without the tax increase, and then I took into account less the homestead farmstead, what we would look to collect. What I can tell you is that is the homestead farmstead rate from last year. Typically, we receive the new farmstead homestead rate on May 1st, so I don't have the new one for next fiscal year. I will have that by next month at the next month meeting. But like I said, the state hasn't released it yet. So I just wanted to give you that snapshot as well so that you could see where we were at. Now we're looking at, okay, what does it look like for the district if we hold taxes to the current rebalanced rate, because irregardless of what I do, which is what I had said earlier, they would have to be rebalanced because of the assessed valuation change. So with that, I have our total expenses, which includes the $419,000 now for the turf, the local revenues, the state revenues, federal revenues. You see I've got a projected deficit of 882,206. That's the amount that if we do nothing would have to come out of the fund balance. Okay? So the next one I used with the projected local revenues with the increase. So looking at that, our total expenses remain the same. The local revenues, however, change in this aspect. And I showed the state revenues the same, federal revenues. Our projected deficit is $158,000. So in talking with Dr. Boone, we talked about needs and what he felt that our district needed and what our kids are basically in need of, is what we kind of looked at. And one of the things that he suggested was a psychologist. So with that being said, he also said, I want to see what the budget looks, and that's the first, the 158,000 with the tax increase has that psychologist in there. If I remove that psychologist position, then your projected deficit is $67,754.44. And in these slides, what I'm doing is I'm giving you as the board options on what you want to look at, what you want to do. And, obviously, you tell me and we'll do whatever you would like us to do. The total expenses, once again, if I remove the turf. So, and this is in the general fund right now. The total expenses, revenues, if I remove the turf, the 419,000, then we show a projected amount going into the fund balance of $261,000.
Mrs. Mondat, can I ask a question real quick? On the projected deficit slide,
Which one?
it would be the one right after the deficit without tax increase slide.
Okay.
Number 17.
The projected deficit, is that a negative 158 or is it a positive 158?
The negative 158.
Okay, because in the other slide, you had it as a negative, and I didn't know if
Well, I had
we
the
were getting it
negative-
credited.
I'm sorry, yes, I did. I apologize for that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that wasn't like a,
Yeah, because it's a negative 158,000.
Okay.
Because I wanted to keep that the same as the expenditures, I'm showing the revenues as negatives. I apologize for that, yes.
so then that 67,000 on the next slide is a negative 67,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And the $261,000 is actually adding that to the fund balance. Because it's
that's
a
a
negative because it's essentially working with the revenue type situation.
But then on the next slide, which maybe I might have been, on this slide, that's a negative, the 283?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because that's,
No, they're not all negative. This one's actually a positive, she said.
yeah, I apologize for that, yes.
It takes it from 419 to 261. They're both negative.
Okay, so the next one is if we move back, employee number 2583,
Yeah.
back into the general fund. And right now, we have that person's sub in as an Esser's cost. So therefore, that part remains the same because it already was accounted for in Esser's, whether I take it from the general fund and put it back, take it from Esser's and put it back into the general fund. So with that being said, the projected deficit would be $283,421.69, which is the initial $158,000 plus the $125,421.69. So one of the things that, that we have done at the district is, if you remember last year, we got capital fund monies in order to do some capital improvements for the roof at the high school, for the masonry work, for garland materials, all of that type stuff. So we borrowed, and it was funded in December, $4,054,000. Of that, there was $50,000 in fees on the note. So we deposited in laddered CDs $4,004,000. And what I did was, and I took every bid tab that was awarded, and I arrived at our amount that was in for capital projects. So there's a balance of $263,687.85 after we pay for the capital funds that are already allocated. So with that, we can transfer those monies from the capital fund back into the general fund, which will help our deficit, which will help us pay for our roof. I also then will ask you.
Turf, not the roof, the turf.
Sorry, I'm looking at roof.
That's okay.
Saying roof instead of turf, which will help us pay for our turf. I also then will ask you, as Mr. Turnley talked about this evening, having the additional amount of money that's in an unassigned fund balance, I'm also going to ask you next month to put in $175,000 from unassigned to assigned fund balance for the turf project. So with the 263 and the 175 that we're going to move, with your approval, obviously, from the fund balance, we can then pay, then we will have a balance for capital funds, or the turf, so to speak, of $438,000 and some change. Obviously, the estimated needed for turf, because that's just merely a quote at this point in time, that's not an RFP that has went out, is $419,000. With that being said, we should be able then to cover that $419,000 that is needed. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. That's how we can do that. But one of the things that Dr. Boone asked me to do, and I've wanted to do since I've been here, is start working on a multiple year budget so that you can see what's going to happen in the future. Because I think that's very telling, because right now, if we raise taxes to the millage that I have estimated, per mill, we'll have about $200,000, okay? So what I did was, I looked at all of the contracts that I currently have in the system. The food service is another fund, so I did not put that into the mix because it's not in the general fund per se. So the tax collector account, we do have a board motion that is a multi-year, so there isn't any increase from the 23-24 budget to the 24-25 budget. The security, now I will tell you, there is no current agreement for 24-25 for the security police, the custodial maintenance, for the van aides, or for the teachers, or for the PCA health service nurses. So what I did whenever I worked on the initial 24-25 budget was I increased the security, police, and custodial maintenance by 2%. Now, obviously, that looking at some other items that may be a little rich. The secretarial, so the security police with a 2% increase, that comes up to $8,322.21 of an increase. The custodian, and this includes the increase per contract. This also includes the assumption from the PEASER's website of the employer rate for 24-25, which is an increase of will be 34.73%. And I also put a 5% increase in there, hoping that if we have this mountainous increase this year, Hopefully, next year will not be nearly as bad. I budgeted 5% increase. Just, those are my variables. I also took the teacher's contract and I advanced it in step and column and mirrored what is in the current contract so that it's acting as if their contract is carrying on the same way that it currently is. So with that being said, if you look at the total dollar value here on the bottom, from one year to the next, just with salary increases, not including anything else for capital projects, for things like our, I know we're having problems with our coolers, we have boiler issues, we have problems with the, we only did a little bit of paving last year. You know, all of those type things that we need are increased for the 24-25 school year, just in salaries and fringe benefits, I'm estimating now would be $478,646.90, which is why I'm proposing that, you know, we do the increase, and we'll need to look at an increase of about at least 2 mils for the next year's budget without any other increases or adding any capital expenditures. So what I'm trying to do is, and then I hope to do the 25, 26, and 26, 27 to give you like a 3-year increase so that you can look and see where we're at, where we're moving to, so that you understand the big picture that we're trying to show you. I know it's not what anybody wants to hear. It's not what I want to project, but unfortunately, it is the reality.
I have a number of questions, if I may ask.
Absolutely.
That last plan where you were going to transfer this money and this money, we were going to pay for the turf, you were talking about transferring borrowed money, right?
Yeah.
Borrowed money. She's going to transfer borrowed money to pay our bills now.
She's going to transfer borrowed money to pay for the turf
Right.
that we borrowed to pay for the turf.
She's transferring borrowed money.
She's transferring borrowed money that we borrowed for 2 capital projects. One was for the roof at the high school, and the other was for...
Michelle, that all comes due.
It does come...
Borrowed money comes due.
I'm just
It's
saying
like me
what the money
going
was
out.
borrowed for. It's what it's being...
I'm not talking about what it's for. I'm talking about the fact that we're taking borrowed money and using it to pay for a football field, for the turf. That bothers me tremendously, because borrowed money comes due.
It does.
Okay, you know, in my own life, if I go out and take a $50,000 loan and pay off some bills, I still owe $50,000. It doesn't really make it any better. Maybe you save a couple cents. But I hope that the public understands that this proposed budget includes almost a 5 mil property tax increase, 4.89 something. I have calculated and done a history of the tax increases in Southmoreland for the last 20 years. Since 2018 till now, you will get a shade under a 20 mil increase just in that period of time. Just from 2018 to this, you will increase that. Your house is still your house, you're still paying your bills, and your taxes are going to be increased by almost 5 mils.
Wasn't it like 6 to 10 years prior to 2018, there wasn't a millage rate increase whatsoever? There wasn't
I have a 20-year record.
Then.
I have a 20-year record, and there are
But you've only said
many.
2018. If
Okay,
it's
in
20 records, say
2002,
it all.
let me give you the statistics. In 2002, Southmoreland was paying 53 mils. With this year, it will be 95 mils. That's since 2003. From 53 to 95 mils. How can this be sustainable when we live in a community where the income for a family of 4 is pathetic?
So I am not disagreeing with what you're saying about how is this sustainable. It's certainly not sustainable. It's not sustainable for any district that has an area depressed like our area is depressed. There is zero growth here. So if you are looking at the New Kensington Arnolds, the Dairies, the Southmorelands, the Jeanettes, the haves versus the have-nots, the haves are the people that have the Route 30 corridor in their favor, where businesses are going in Places where they have sewage and big, beautiful two-family income homes are being built on property taxes. That's why districts such as Hempfield, districts as Norwin, districts as Latrobe do not have to raise taxes to the millage rates that we have, because they have growth within themselves without raising taxes. This is our average. I had asked Dr. Boone to do this. Obviously, Southmoreland is the red line. The average for Westmoreland County is the black line. We are finally, from 2011, meeting what the average is in surrounding communities. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's our reality here. Do I think that there needs to be school funding reform? I do. There should be reform. There's going to have to be a change in all these small community schools. There definitely has to be a change. But we are not a moneymaker. Therefore, taxes is the only way that we have to bring revenue into the district. What is your proposal? What would you cut?
Did you do a graph showing per capita income across the years?
Right there.
Across the county? Per capita income?
No, I didn't do a per
No,
capita
no,
income.
a family of four living in Scottsdale, what is it, $40-some thousand you're living on?
I think it's 50-some.
50,000? Okay, in Hempfield, it
53
may
maybe.
be 70 or 80. What's that, any of that got to do with us? I'm worried about the sustainability of our schools and our people.
I am worried about the same thing. That's why I'm saying that there needs to be reform here. I can't cause reform at the state level at this point.
Then it's a moot point. Then it's not going to help.
So what would you propose that we do?
I have
Okay.
a number of suggestions.
Okay, can we have them?
Yes. I'm going to go back to this Esser's money. Now, according to what I have just seen, $268,000 has been taken out of Esser's and put in the general budget fund. Is that correct? Actually, it's more than that, because there's a third person I didn't know about. Is that right?
Well, the thing is, and that's what Mr. Turnley was trying to say whenever he was here, with Esser's, it's kind of, you have the expenditures, but then you also have the revenues in which to match it.
Right.
So whenever I don't know if you happened to receive the spreadsheet that I made up?
Probably not.
Okay, because
But my question, Pam, is this. Esser's money is free money. It's not your tax dollar. It's your tax dollar, believe me. But we got $3,600,000 in Esser's money. Free. We didn't raise your taxes to get that money. So we have this big pile of money there. And we are taking costs out of Esser's and putting it into our taxpayer-funded budget at Southmoreland.
So I just want to make it clear so that people aren't confused. What we're doing is taking an employee right now who's being paid in Esser's money and putting her into the general fund, which if we don't do that this year, we will have to do that next year.
Well, let's talk about that. When Esser's people were hired and this board had a discussion, it was made specifically clear that those positions were created and hired to deal with COVID-related issues, or we couldn't spend the money.
So I think.
So now,
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I'll go when you're done.
so now we're taking COVID money, free money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and putting these costs over into our budget where we're going to tax you to pay that bill. That's exactly what's happening.
So my understanding, first of all, we had several positions that we did create to use Esser's money with. And some
Right.
of those were to help students that needed extra help with learning. We created some help for disciplining and mental health and different areas like that. The interventionists that we hired were a very specific 2-year deal, because we knew after that 2 years, we do not have the funds to pay for them. Those people are not being put into the general budget. The person who, the position that's being put into the general budget is the position that when we hired that position, we said, for these 2 years, we are going to use Esser's money because we can. After that, this is a position that is desperately needed. We are going to put them into the general budget. This was not a temporary position.
Why?
Because
Why would you do that?
because the money runs out and then you fall off a cliff.
That's the future. That is in the future. Right now, we're looking at
That's right.
a
It's
5
now.
mil tax increase. And the free money's not being used.
So I'm not addressing the tax increase. What I'm addressing right now is what you just brought up with those positions. So there were 5 temporary, I believe 5 interventionists that were temporary. We had other positions that were created which were not temporary. We used those funds, I hate to use, no, I shouldn't use that word. You move money around and use for ESSERS what you can use for ESSERS because there's very specific stipulations on how you can use it. I have been to other board meetings, with other schools, I've talked to other school board members from across the country, and they have worded things a specific way to use ESSERS money. If you want to play that game and try it out and see if that works, go for it, but that's not something I think that we should do. I think that we have used that fund very well, but there are 2 positions that we know with 100% certainty they're going to continue. So I think that's
One
why.
of them's not even continuing. One of them, if it goes back in the way that it's worded here, they're going back into the classroom, and we won't have a sub any longer.
Right.
So it's putting that person back where,
That's the third one, right?
Yeah,
that's the
so
second one.
Third one. We have a dean of students and we have the other one.
That's 2.
Yeah, and then the one that you just had in the, she just put a third one back in.
No, that's the second. That is the second. There's not 3, there's 2.
You know, Michelle, when I asked the question at the budget meeting, I said there's at least 4 people that should be paid by ESSERS COVID. No, there's only 1. We have teachers, we have deans of students, we have administrators. They're all being paid by ESSERS money. Not anymore, because
them
we're going to
still are,
just
yes.
drop them over into our
Some of them
budget.
still are, yes. And those are the people that are permanent, and we're going to have to live within a budget to sustain that. That's the point. So back to, you would move them back to ESSERS.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you why. This is the main reason. The money's one, but the second one is this. When those positions are changed to district positions, they no longer have to worry about COVID problems because that's not why they're being paid. And I want them to continue with the regulations and the limits on that now that push the activities of those people to devote themselves to COVID-related activities where the money was intended to go in the first place. The job description is no longer COVID when you go back to the district.
Some of these job descriptions weren't COVID.
Well, that, they were hired under COVID money, then you were lying about it because they were hired because there were COVID problems that needed solved.
Okay, so what else would you do? That's one of your solutions.
Well, and if we put them back in ESSERS money, because honestly, the money's all there, we're just saying where it's coming from. So what would you take out of ESSERS and put back into the general fund then?
Nothing.
Well, we can't.
Nothing. All
can't
I'm
do it
saying
that
is
way.
you're adding $400,000 to taxpayer money as opposed to using the free money.
Maybe I misunderstood. So in my mind, which is not a financial mind, this is our budget is our checking account. We have our fund balance, which is our savings. And then in my mind, I have a little extra savings account, which is ESSERS. So I'm thinking, we're paying for all these things. The reason we would put it in the budget is because for next year, we want it to be in the budget already. We want to be able to account for it and say, this is what we're going to have to plan for. So if we say, okay, we're taking that back out of the budget and putting it in ESSERS, there's only so much money in ESSERS. So if we pay for it out of ESSERS, that means something else that was in there, because all that money has to be used by the end of next year.
I've asked the question, and they don't even know what they're going to use it. I asked the superintendent today, I said, what are you going to do with that $500,000? He says, we haven't talked about it.
So
I can speak to that briefly. When I say we haven't talked about it, we haven't talked collectively as a group about a solid plan for that. I can't recommend what to do with that money until I know exactly how much money will be left. Second of all along with ESSERS money, districts have been advised to not use that money solely on salary that you wouldn't be able to sustain after it's gone. Districts were advised to use it on items that they wouldn't necessarily be able to do without it. I'm thinking curriculum programs, I'm thinking technology, your HVAC units, stuff like that. So as far as what next year looks like with what we intend to use the balance of ESSER's money for, I can't come together with a plan to present to the board until I know exactly how much is going to be left.
Right. Because we have to know, which direction that you want us to definitively go on, and then I can work on getting it.
Michelle,
And not to mention, you can't physically make a matter-of-fact decision on COVID money or ESSER's money, whatever you want to call it, without the board's conclusion on that.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And Nicole, you said it well, and I want to talk about that, and I'm going to quote you really well. There was a conversation held by the board when these positions were filled, and we discussed the fact that at the end of the ESSER's money, the positions were gone, and Nicole O'Rear said, unless we decide to keep them, unless, if there's a change, we, the board, decide, vote, keep them, change their employment status. That was pounded on the table. Now, all of a sudden, it doesn't exist.
There's one position specifically that was not hired as COVID money. One position. The rest of them were temporary positions.
Which is why we had
Nobody
actual
is-
contracts
Nobody
for
is
them.
wavering from the fact that is what we did. So I just want to point something out that, okay, so you want to put this $268,000 back on ESSER's. That's fine. You could do that. But the point is that next year, looking at the projection that Mrs. Mondock has given us, salaries alone, with those two positions being already back in these numbers, comes out to about $480,000. So if then you have to add in $268,000 or whatever the number is on top of that, you're looking at over $700,000 that you have to make up for next year. That's why these positions are being put back in here.
This is all-
One of them is being put back into their previous position, the substitute being taken away, person goes back to the classroom in one of these proposals. Then the other person who is a permanent person in that position, not hired because of COVID, is going to be back in there as well. None of the other temporary people are being moved away from ESSER's money. This is all,
Right.
so.
I think it's time to give our taxpayers a break. They've had a tax increase year after year after year after year after year, and it's going to continue. And if you think is this going to stop next year? It's not, folks.
So where else would you find money in
You
here?
cut, Michelle. You
What
cut.
would you cut?
Okay, I did an analysis on the football field, the turf, okay? Because, grass is an option. $418,000, okay? And how long is that good for, Pam? 8 years?
Basically 10 years.
10 years, okay.
10-year life.
So that's what, $40,000 a year. We play 5 home games,
5 home games of what?
football.
Do you think football's the only sport that uses?
That's what it's for the artificial turf is for football.
All of our sports use that field.
Okay, I'm talking about artificial turf with lines on it, 10 yards, football. So for every time we
Also
play a home
soccer
game,
uses that
it
field.
costs $8,000 to walk out on that field and
Boys
play.
and girls soccer use that field. The band uses that.
They don't
field.
have to have artificial turf.
Middle school uses the.
They don't
field.
have to have artificial
you
turf.
know what, Michelle?
In the summer,
one thing
there's
I want to
4
bring up.
sports alone practicing on the turf, sometimes 5.
That's right. We're sitting here arguing about ESSER's money, all this and all that, where the money's coming from. We seem to forget, I see a lot of other school districts, and I don't know why we don't take advantage of it. We got a young lady back there, God, she does it for Scott Del Boro. Every time they need something, I read the paper, she got him a grant. She got him $500,000 grant for the sewage lines. She got him this, she got him that. Whenever we know something needs done in a school district, some capital project, anything like that, we should start looking at grants. We don't get them, other school districts get them. Ampfield is doing everything, they're building this, they're building that. How you think they're doing it? I mean, there's a lot of grants up there, we're sleeping, folks. I mean, we got a lady up there, she's the vice principal, who's very knowledgeable in that. Let's start using her. We got Dr. Claire up there who knows that kind of stuff. Let's start going after that stuff. We were told by the athletic director when I first got on the board that if we do the football field, we could get half the grant, half the money back via grant. Has anybody done anything towards that? Heck no, I don't see anything.
Actually, Mr. Boring did apply for grants for the football
And it
field.
was too late.
We did not get awarded it. It was,
Yeah, because it was too late. I mean, when you know a project is going to happen, we should jump on it immediately.
But I mean, you could apply again.
I mean, Dr. Boone had a good idea. He wants to bring in a state senator. He wants to bring in a state legislature, meet with them, let them know, the problem we're having. Let's see what they can do for us.
So I actually met with, Dr. Boone and I both met with Mr. DeVane.
Okay, there's money up there, Chrissy, believe me. The state has money. There's federal money up there. We don't go after it, somebody else does.
I think one of the problems we run into, and I agree with you 100%, is that other school districts who are better off than us
Yeah,
have grant writers.
that's
They
right.
have a bigger business department than we do.
But let me ask you something, Chrissy. What do we got to lose? Nothing. We're going to try. We got Dr. Clara there. He knows that kind of stuff.
I think time.
You got a
is-
Charity Collenbank. Look what she's doing for Scott Del Boro. I mean, she can do the same thing for the school district. Hey, that's going to be worth her salary. Think about it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that we could get. Let's go after it. Let's not just sit here like, I don't know what, the gababoons or something, whatever they call them. I mean, let's go after it. Let's wake up, folks.
Flash.
We're arguing about this, we're arguing about that. You know what? We're arguing, we're sitting back,
Can I mention
we're losing.
about possibly, can we also, instead of maybe looking into a psychologist, possibly looking into a social worker?
So we could discuss the school psychologist piece of that later, why that's a
Sure.
need.
I mean, it's definitely a need, don't get me wrong, but I think,
Because I think part of the thing was to have that person placed at SES so that they could be helping support some of the students in that building that need some help.
I recommend that we do something, really. I recommend
so
that we
one-
wake up
Go ahead.
and do something and get some money here, no matter how naked we do it. We don't want to rob a bank, we don't want to go to jail, but, let's get the state, let's get the federal government. Hey, those politicians come to us when they need us, don't they? Well, we need them. The people in this community need them. The school district needs them. Let's get some cash. We don't get it, somebody else does. I remember a few years ago, Uniontown was in trouble, Collinsville was in trouble. A state senator gave them about $200,000 apiece. Someone never got anything, they never asked.
People at Connellsville.
That's right. A few years ago, they got $200,000 from a state senator. And so did Uniontown School District. How? They asked.
something that I had talked about with a couple different people, about possibly doing, if it's possible, about rallying as far as bringing in, say, Special Olympics to help with the football field, the football turf, rallying with that, getting the community involved.
Raising funds for it.
Yes, and raising funds, sorry. I was getting to that, and then, yeah. But yeah, and raising funds for something like that. Getting the community involved,
A couple of us put on a heck of a pasta for protection dinner, I'm just saying.
Hey, yeah, well, exactly. I mean, doing something along those lines to bring in funds instead of pushing it back on the taxpayer. I mean, yes, it's inevitable. Taxes increase along with everything else, but I mean, Dr. Fike is correct. I agree. We have hit our taxpayers heavy. And if we could at least take a little bit of load off, I think it's something that we should maybe look into,
Michelle, I have another place where I think we need to look at cutting expenses. I filled out a right-to-know request, and I wanted our legal costs for January and February of this year, 2 months. In 2 months, our legal costs were $19,135. That comes out to almost $10,000 a month, almost, about $9,700. You multiply that and this stuff continues, you're going to be paying another $116,000 a year in legal costs. But what bothers me is that in January and February, there were 96 items listed, 96 charges for legal activity, legal costs. We only had 40 days of school. That averaged somewhere between 2.5 and 3 legal contacts a day. A day. We have phone calls in here. There's one phone call here for $270. $150, $180, $135. These are just phone calls. And apparently, I have a question in all of this. Who is in control of this service that we're paying for? Who's controlling this service? Because there's an item in here where if 2 attorneys get together in an office and they talk to each other, they send us a bill. Okay? Who authorizes that? I mean, I'm in the dark here, folks. I don't know. Because when we had a previous solicitor, and I've been on this board before, I don't pick up that phone and call that solicitor. I'm not allowed. It's $150 an hour. I would never call a solicitor, ever. Somebody is. How is this?
Board members don't call the solicitor.
I would think not. I would
No.
think, well, who is it? We're having 2.5 to 3 calls a day, Christy. There they are, hon.
Well,
There
I
they
think a
are.
lot of it is some of the stuff we talk about in executive session, some of the issues that we have going on that we cannot speak about publicly, but there are
Some of it, but
things.
I'm not buying it. It's that many. I agree with you. There are some. I'm saying it's a blank check. It's out of control. And I just think it's something we need to look at instead of raising taxes to pay these bills.
So I have a couple of questions that were brought up with Mr. Turnley's presentation. So I noticed, and I think I asked this a couple years ago or last year, when we assign items in the fund balance. So for instance, one year we had said, we're going to put this money for cyber school. And we were expected to take that money and use it for cyber school. Now, it looks like that balance has been the same for the past couple years. So we haven't actually used that money. And he kind of pointed that out, saying there are a couple things in there that you say you're going to use it and you don't. So why are we not using that? Now, I understand it's like a savings account and that money's going to run out. But also, we're not using it for what we say we're going to use it for,
Right.
and we keep increasing other things. Is there something, okay, don't put it for that then. Put it for something that's not going to, because cyber, I think, is going to keep increasing every year. That's one of those things. But can we take that money and say, we need curriculum, we need computers, we need other things, we need databases, we need all of these other things, instead of that money just sitting there? I feel like we could be using it for something that we need mental health services. And that leads to my second question, the mental health block grant. That's something that we've gotten a couple of times, is that right?
Yeah.
Like every year. So what are we using those funds for?
Okay.
Exactly.
So the mental health grant, actually, that was something that Dr. Clara and Charity worked on. For last year, it was $126,000, $26,001, I think, for mental health and security. And we have been utilizing a lot of the funds for security. I know we're working on getting some of the additional monies. They're working on a plan for the mental health. I can tell you in Governor Shapiro's budget, this past year, there was $100,000 in there allocated to all schools, and then we got an additional 20, so it was like $120,000 for mental health. I did put the $100,000 in our current budget in the revenue portion.
For security and mental health, or
No, just security just mental health for next year.
Okay.
How are
So
those services delivered?
what's that?
How's those mental health services delivered at $100,000?
Visit rather than have that come into the school. So there are a number of things that are offered. Sometimes those items can be services that a family needs, or sometimes services just a child needs.
Is it therapy, Dan? They're getting therapy? How much of that is happening? Do you know?
already doing it, so this would be.
You're not doing it in school? Therapy? Okay, and you
But
don't know?
that's not what this money is used for.
I won't be clear. That's something that's already happened, so if you're asking, does it happen? Yes.
Okay.
There are other things we can provide in addition to it. That's already happened.
Dan, we have 5 guidance counselors in Southmoreland. 5 guidance counselors.
I don't think they provide mental health services, though.
I thought we need
Which,
social-
and I
counselor
think that, I think that's part of what I'm asking with this. I have had both parents and teachers reach out to me saying, we need help with mental health issues. We need it. And it's not just for the kids that have IEPs. This is everyone. They are needing these mental health resources. So I'm curious just how exactly we're going to use those, what types of resources they're going to be. And at the same time, do parents even know, because I did not, that your child could get counseling in the school from someone that comes into the school? Are parents aware of that? Because I don't think that they are.
So it's not something we offer to every student all the time, depends on what type of need is, what they.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm going at. I'm not sure that we have a connection enough with families to know, okay, this kid could use this. Right.
I would say one of the decisions we have to make is, with that funding, there are a couple of different ways we can go. You could have someone who's a social worker, who does specific things. There are other avenues you can choose too. I don't know which one is the right one, because I think we need a little bit of everything, right? So if you pick one, okay, but that may leave an issue somewhere else, we also feel like, or those things sometimes change, right? Sometimes we have a need for social workers, we want people going out of the homes. Other times, we have people who are really needing it right now in schools. So I think it's trying to gauge what the best expenditure is. And quite frankly, I don't know. That's not my specialty. But I think we need to weigh that out. What is the best usage of that? Because it kind of fluctuates depending on who you ask, right? If you ask the teacher, they might give you one perspective. If you ask me, I'm going to have a different perspective. Sure.
And parents could have a whole different perspective.
Exactly. So I think that's something we have to wrestle with. We have funding for it, I think we just have to decide what's the best usage of it. And quite frankly, I think it's going to be more than just one of us or two of us. And we really have questions to ask about what we feel that money should be spent on. I don't know.
My question, Dan, is who would connect people up with that therapy in school? Who is the person who calls and says, I want to order this therapy?
So our counselors will make a recommendation.
The counselors.
Home here, what Claire is saying.
Beyond what they're able to provide, right? We'll make a recommendation from someone, a psychologist who says, yeah, I think this would be a service in school to make that happen for them. You have someone that you feel can help them, that can be a great resource for them. Good families who can't necessarily travel to get therapy, so that can be a third way that somebody gets access to it. There are myriad ways that goes, but quite frankly, I think this is an excellent conversation to have. What is the next person? I don't know what that is. I would like to know how others receive. I think it's important to get the perspective of a parent as well as a board member. Hey, this is something I feel like we don't know enough about. From my seat, I have an opinion on what I think we should spend on, but I'm only one person. I'm only maybe only seeing one side of it. So I think we do have to wrestle with that.
And that leads me to these could be some things that money that's just staying the same from year to year that we say we're going to use and we inevitably do not use and we add a little bit back in, that maybe we need to look at using some of that money for the resources that we need, instead of letting it sit there and saying, hey, we have this issue, and the money sits there and sits there, which I really liked how he did that, because it does show you that we have this assigned money that we are not using for what we said we would use it for.
Also, is the roofing project, is that all a set amount of money?
It was bid, yes. Now, one thing I will caution you on is anytime, like when you're doing home construction, you open things up, you think that it's going to cost you X because you've got a quote, but they open something up and find something, so you may end up with a change order. But as of today, whenever you guys voted in October with those bids, because those were competitive, that was a competitive RFP that was sent out, yes, that indeed was the prices that they indeed committed to doing the work for.
The median family the median household income is 56,000, just so you know.
56. It's a family of 4.
Household.
Household.
Whatever they
household.
consider a
However
household.
many people there are, yeah.
Is there any other discussion? I would recommend next year when we go into this conversation that we have a separate meeting. Just based on the importance and the fact that it's 8:15 and a very lengthy agenda. Okay. CWCTC report. Mrs. Smith.
Our monthly meeting is actually this evening, so I'm missing it. They had to change it because of Easter break. A lot of members could not be there last week. So it is actually this evening. They are continuing the work they've been doing. There's some personnel that they are interviewing for. A lot of the children right now, students, they're not children, are doing the Skills USA state competitions. It's actually yesterday, I believe, in Hershey. There are, let's see, they had 670 new applications for CWCTC this year. There are also 822 set to return next year that were already there. So that puts them at about max capacity. I have been told that if students applied, they would be getting an email, hopefully tomorrow, April 15th, letting them know if they were accepted into their first or second choice, or if they're on a wait list. That was the proposed date. Now, I'm not saying that with 100% certainty, but that was the date they kept giving us. So whatever email they applied with is the email that the response would go to, just in case anybody has kids out there that applied. They are also planning to send letters home with students for families to find out. So if there's any updates from the meeting tonight, I can let you know at the next meeting.
Thank you. WIU report.
Yeah, I'll make it brief and emphasize the things that I think are more relevant to our district. We certainly dealt with routine matters. There were more resignations. There was a lot of discussion about people attending workshops and what they do with that information when they get back, and they want to really maximize their bang for their buck on that. They continue to look at ways to generate finances using CSIU as an example. They did distribute to us completed contracts with their staff, and we reviewed them, and then we were able to vote on them. They discussed the success of Rachel's Challenge. There will be a school board, a WIU board in-service program on April 23rd that begins at 12:30 in the afternoon and goes all the way through till night. But the one thing I wanted to talk about for Southmoreland is the IU has a program, and if you go to them, and I think it's free, they will prepare for you a one-page, pretty document that talks about your school. It'll say, this is what Southmoreland is, and it'll talk about all the things you have to offer. They'll have a message from the superintendent and all that. And they have these graphic arts people who do that. And I looked, I think saw 3 or 4 of them. They're absolutely beautiful. But when somebody comes to Southmoreland, they move in, or, even kindergarten, here we are. This is who we are. This is Southmoreland. And they do beautiful work. And I think it's free. I'm pretty sure. Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that if you want to sell yourself and you want to get out in the community, I think this is a very reasonable, free way for us to use, to blow our horns, to say, this is who we are, what we can offer, what we can do. And it's consolidated into sections,
It's a nice report.
It's very nice. So I think if you want to sell the school district to the public in a positive manner, this is one of the things that you can do.
Agreed.
No, that's all I have.
PSBA liaison report.
So the only thing I have, unfortunately, the teacher shortage is still trending negatively. A report from the Philadelphia Inquirer reported that only 4,222 graduates of Pennsylvania teacher programs earned teaching certificates in 21-22. That's down from the highest it ever was 2012, 2013, and there were 16,000. So basically a quarter of the teachers were prepared. So it doesn't look like that issue is going to get better anytime soon.
Is that all you have?
That's all I have.
PSBA legislative report?
So did we talk about at the last meeting, our meeting with Mr. DeVanzo?
You were going to have it.
We were going to have it. We did have it.
We did.
We met for breakfast, and it was our school district, and Yuck and Bell Vernon, and
CTC.
Menneson?
the CTC.
CTC.
Yes. So we all met. We were able to talk with him. He brought one of his assistants along with him. We were able to kind of expose him to some of the things that we're struggling with as well. We talked a little bit about ESSER's money and how some people, after this is done, we talked about the people that we had hired and how we fall off a cliff and we cannot keep them on. So we kind of talked to him about a lot of things. He was very, very nice, very informative, very interested in our schools, all of our schools. He really would like to come, be part of it. There are so many things up in bills right now that are up in the air. And some of the bills have so many crazy different things in them that I would be shocked if they passed because there's so many different little things that they're throwing into these bills that who knows when or if they will actually pass. The budget's still up in the air. What he's recommending, what he, meaning the governor, not Mr. DeVanzo, is recommending, who knows if that'll pass. Like Mrs. Mondak said, you can't really count on the full amount that they project that we will get. That's, I would say, unlikely. But I mean, it was a really good meeting, and I think it started a great relationship. Like I said, he's very interested in being part of the district and knowing what's going on, and I think it was a good thing to do. And when you were talking about the IU, that's this coalition that we're part of is out of the IU, and they will also make a leaflet for schools to focus on their needs as well. So if you are talking to a legislator, if you are talking to a representative, you can say, hey, these are some of the things that we are struggling with or that we could use some help with, and then he has it right there in front of him as well. So I think it was, Dr. Boone, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I know we talked about some legislation that came out this past year that's going to start affecting school districts' bottom lines in terms of dual enrollment and really what that dollar amount looks like for kids in districts. We talked about, the connection between us and the CDC for quality technical school education. So it was a good meeting.
Did he, Mr. DeVanzo, support the governor's education budget? Did he say? He would support?
Oh, yeah, he
it, or-
didn't question.
No. I think it was more of a, will that great of an increase actually be able to happen?
Yeah, he talked more about,
So he doesn't support it? Or-
No, I think he supports it.
he supports it. He started talking about some of the other, I don't want to say forces, but some of the other, counterpoints to the amount of dollars that Governor Shapiro is allotting towards education and how some
That's
other,
just my impression.
priorities.
Like I said,
I was just curious.
We
what
did
he had
talk
to say
about some of
it.
the bills, though, but the fact that they are, like, I've seen a ton of bills. There was one that every school has to have a librarian, which I was like, that would be awesome, but that would also cost us a lot of money.
I will.
I think it would be great, but they're just little things they're throwing into bills and I don't know, I think it's going to, like, knock them off completely because there's so many things that are being thrown into it.
I'll echo that. I get notified probably 2 to 3 times a day from a curriculum specialist at the IU about new legislation that is out. So, and you are correct. There's a wide range of what they are proposing.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what actually, if anything, it makes it through.
Okay, committee reports, buildings, grounds, and safety, Mr. Polakowski.
We haven't met. We have to find a date. If we do need to meet, I don't know, we can
I
talk.
think there's some issues that we should probably try to set a meeting up.
Okay.
Okay, Finance District Operations and Transportation. We met to discuss the budget, and that was what the presentation was this evening. I really don't have anything to add to that. Personnel policy academics, Mrs. Smith.
Yeah, we've been meeting pretty consistently. There are a lot of policies and personnel issues that we've been talking about. We continue to talk about, we actually discussed the 2 agreements that we have within the district. I was trying to think of the right word because I know there's agreements, plans, contracts.
MOU.
Yeah, everything. So we discussed the 2 MOUs. That was something that we went through. Did we do a policy this last meeting? I think it was just the 2 agreements, right?
It was just the agreements.
Yeah. So that was our last meeting, which takes time. So, but they're on the agenda, so we're continuing to
Will you
plug
check
along.
on that policy for the next meeting?
I will. Dr. Fike asked if I would check on the policy for the truancy for the next meeting to make sure that we're in compliance with the state.
Okay, non-academic athletics and extracurricular is Mr. Shipley. Mr. Friend, have you all met since last meeting?
I don't think.
We have not. I don't believe we have.
Okay, student reports.
On March 24th, the high school hosted a bake sale and Teacher Jeans Day for Avery Clark, a kindergartner with leukemia in the district. And on that day, we raised over $1,400. Today, our seniors got one step closer to graduation by receiving their cap and gowns. Graduation will take place in just a little less than 2 months, June 9th, in the high school auditorium. On Thursday, March 9th, 2023, the Southmoreland High School Bots IQ team, Shake and Bake, participated in their preliminary competition section at WCCC. They had 2 wins against Clairton High School and Belle Vernon Area High School, and losses to Charleroi Area High School and Admiral Perry AVTS. The battle versus Clairton left them with substantial damage, but a surprising win since the last hit disabled Clairton's robot. Preparations have been underway for final competitions on Friday, April 28th and Saturday, April 29th at the Penn West, formerly Cal U Convocation Center. New armor, revisions to the frame and electronics, and completing documentation have been many of the items students have been working on recently. Several students were also featured in the local Tribune Review, which was shared on the high school Facebook page. Just recently, I believe March 28th, high school students in Ms. Pushkar's and Mr. Sherrick's classes collaborated to conduct a PSSA test prep session for all 4th grader students on series and parallel circuits. The high school Powder Puff football game would take place on May 12th at 5:30 at the high school stadium. This will include a variety of concession food, including Chick-fil-A sandwiches, who doesn't love those, an alternate male cheerleading performance, a teacher homecoming court, and many exciting surprises. If possible, we highly encourage to plan to attend to support our students and our local Make-A-Wish chapter. I have a few extra things here, a few congratulations to a few of our students. Congratulations to Sophia Price for being awarded the Scottsdale Chamber Senior Recognition Award of the year of March. This specific award demonstrates qualities of service, scholarship, and leadership. And congratulations to Lily Wasman for obtaining the Spirit of Southmoreland Award. And this award demonstrates specific qualities of service, pride, integrity, responsibility, ingenuity, and tenacity. A few more things. Sorry to keep going. Congratulations to Maddie Moore for making the Westmoreland County Girls Basketball Second Team All-Stars. Congratulations to Elijah Meyer for making the Westmoreland County Boys Basketball Second Team All-Stars. Congratulations to Ty Keffer for making the Westmoreland County Boys Basketball First Team All-Stars, averaging 22.3 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, with a career-high 45-point game and 1,124 career points and counting. And congratulations to Amara McCutcheon for being named the Westmoreland County Athlete of the Week. And that is all. And Dr. Boone presented our graduating seniors list.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you. Is he free to go if he needs to? Now that he did his student report.
You would like
Unless you want to stay. I mean, you're.
You would like to
For a little bit.
Okay.
I enjoy it.
He has said a couple times he enjoys it.
Nice, nice.
All right. Old business?
They
like
removed
grunge
from the
politics.
table
Come on,
resolution number 2022-2023-04. The board is asked to add the removal of resolution number 2022-2023-04 from the table to the voting meeting agenda. Any discussion on this?
I will ask that it be pulled for discussion.
Were you asking it for it to be moved to the voting?
At the voting meeting.
It's second.
Is there a second to tabling this motion? You want it removed or you want it to stay tabled? You want it removed from the agenda?
Well, I'm going to ask that it be pulled for discussion.
Pulled
This is
for
the
discussion.
We can
It's the
discuss it now.
discussion meeting.
I want to discuss it at the voting meeting. You can pull an item at the voting meeting and discuss it.
Okay, that's fine. We can discuss it again. That's fine. I mean, it will be there for discussion unless somebody does not want it on the voting meeting.
You need a second.
I don't need a
Oh,
second.
you don't need a second?
Because it's on, I mean, if you don't want it, if somebody wants it removed from the voting meeting, then we would need to make a motion to do that. If you wish it to stay on the voting meeting, she wants to discuss it at the voting meeting, it will be there for discussion again.
I thought we were,
Is there any further discussion on this?
Why would you ask it to be removed? That would never happen. I mean, that's not going to happen.
then we have to
Well,
untable it?
So first of all, let me remind everybody again that during the discussion meeting is the time to remove anything from this agenda and separate it out so that it's not lumped in with other items. So if there's something under personnel or something under policy that you don't want to see lumped together and you would like to discuss it separately, again, now is the time to pull that out.
Well, that isn't lumped with anything, is it?
No, it's not. Okay, item number 2, which is the resolution. The board is asked to add the approval of resolution number 2022-2023-04, censure of Dr. Catherine Fike for violation of district policy and the Sunshine Act to the voting meeting. Is there any discussion?
All right, next section is policies.
A second.
So under
You need, what do you need for that?
Just discussion.
Okay.
Under policies, we have 2 items, policy 707, the use of school facilities, and policy number 800.2, electronic data storage. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about either of these items being put on?
No, I do, and it's just a simple thing. When you look at that policy 707, there's a chart. I have 8,000 pieces of paper here. It lists Group A, Group E, and Group C, right? There's a definition of Group A, but B and C are empty. There's no definition. How do you know what you are if you're B and C? I could find that paper, I'm sure, if I look hard enough.
There should be a definition for all of them.
Well, that's
right?
the ones I have
There's a
don't.
definition of it in the administrative regs.
It's where?
It's in the administrative regulations.
Oh, I think it should be on this chart.
I mean, I can add it to it. I can certainly add
Well,
it.
I don't know, if somebody were to say to me, what do I need to be to, reserve the gym or something like that? Are you Group A, or Group C? I only have one definition, B and C are empty. There's just empty boxes. And I think if you define one, you should define Group B so that they know who they are, and Group C should know who they are, because there's different prices. You pay more if you're a B and a C.
Sure. I can add that.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on either of those items?
All right, personnel.
Okay, so we have several items under personnel. The personnel log for April 13th, 2023, FMLA request for employee number 1041, uncompensated leave request from employee number 1041, uncompensated leave request from employee number 3526. Item number 5 is 2023 extended school year ESY pay rates. And number 6 is approval of personnel. That'll be the approval of items number 1 through 5. I do have a question about the ESY. Can this motion be amended here, or do we need to amend this motion in the voting meeting?
I think we just had to amend the schedule, which would be under education, right?
We need to we wanted to add to it that there needs to be an MOU for this before it could be put in place. And we need to move that one teacher up to the session 1. So both of those things need to be done. Can that be done here, or should it just be done in the voting meeting? Okay.
Michelle, didn't we have a lot of discussion that there's supposed to be a statement in there stating that this is for just this summer only? And
Yes, we just said we needed to get an MOU with the,
you can't just put it in as,
well, I would like to see the MOU be covering more than just this year.
Oh.
So that we're not coming back every year with a new rate. This would be the rate.
that would be the MOU, that this is the final thing.
Yes.
But what I'm concerned about is, can't you put that in the motion? You have to have an MOU?
You could approve it subject to an MOU agreed upon by the board and the union or whoever, or the.
I think it's still, there still need to be an approval of an MOU.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, item 7 is confidential administrative assistant to the superintendent and school board and HR specialist. And Mrs. Geyer had a question on this, that the agreement is from July 1, but if she's coming June 1.
It'll be prorated.
It'd be prorated, yeah.
We would prorate that then. And then this would, I think this also allows this agreement to expire at the same time as the other secretarial agreement, so that they're on the same.
I just wanted to be sure we were all covered.
Right.
Oh, 1 second. For this,
Doesn't say it in here.
it is,
Next section is education.
Item number 1, we have a letter of agreement with WIXI, July 16th, 2023 to July 15th, 2025. That agreement is attached there. There's an agreement with New Directions 2023-2024 school year. Again, there is an agreement attached. Item number 3, pre-K counts MOU 2023 to 2024. There's agreements attached to all of these. Final Southmoreland School District Special Education Plan approval. Any discussion on any of these items? Any discussion on this one since it's our plan? 2023 extended school year schedule. This is another one that would need to be amended to move Mr. Craig up to Schedule 1. Item number 6, Student Discipline Agreement, Resolution Number 2022-2023-05. Item number 7, Student Discipline Agreement, Resolution Number 2022-2023-06. Item number 8 is Student Discipline Agreement, Resolution Number 2022-2023-07. Item number 9, Student Discipline Agreement, Resolution Number 2022-2023-08. Item number 10, Student Discipline Agreement, Resolution Number 2022-2023-09. Is there any discussion on any of those items?
Why do we have so many?
I'd hate to say that it's that time of year, but it's getting to that time of year. It always seems to be. As the school year goes on, you tend to have more of these kind of agreements.
Is this something that was clumped together, like something that happened, like that was real big, that all these students were in?
They were not all the same event.
This is all
No.
separated?
All
Okay,
separate.
I was like, jeez.
All separate. Good question.
Yeah, I looked these over very carefully, and one of them is big time. Okay, one is big time. But the other 4 were identical. They're all a number of days. They all return at different times. Some of them return after school's out. I don't know how that works. But my question is this what the policies say you do? Is this it?
The policy essentially is if there's a student code of conduct violation great enough for expulsion, we can certainly move to expel.
Oh, yeah, none of these are expulsions.
No, but this is an option in lieu of expulsion. And
But
that's
what
why
I'm
we-
saying is these 4 that are identical, is that what our policy says? If you do this, 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 or this, it's all the same? Is there a policy that guided this?
Yes. The student code of conduct policy basically says if you have a violation of certain degree than these
Okay,
are.
and all of these fell under that then, except one.
There is also discretion allowed.
Yes.
The policy also allows for, which is common. That would be a normal thing.
Any other discussion on those items? Okay, item number 11 is All-State Band or Wind Ensemble. Item number 12 is Retroactive Region Band. Any discussion on any of those items?
Next section is finance.
Item number 1, Monthly Board Treasurer's Report. Is there any discussion on this? General Fund Board Summary Report. Any discussion? WIU 2023-2024 budget. Is there any discussion there? Oops. Okay. Item number 4, Accounting and Food Service Check Summary Listing. Discussion. Budgetary transfers. Discussion.
I do just have a quick question. When it says, oh, I see these are both for overdrawn accounts. So where are you, there's numbers here, like I'm assuming where they're coming from and where they're going to. How do you, this isn't overdrawn, I just want to make sure we stipulate, this is not an overdrawn checking account. This is
No.
This is a line item that they've spent.
It's a line item in the
budgeted for.
budget. I have individual flex reports written for each of the areas, for each of the buildings, for each of the, like, athletics, for custodial maintenance, those type things. And I go through them and make sure that there isn't anything overdrawn. If there is, I make sure and do the budgetary transfers, because if I do that, then in years to come, you'll be able to see what you actually spent your funds on.
No, that makes complete sense. I do see some of these are for several $1,000s. Is there an issue with certain departments, or is this just like something, a fluke thing happened and a fluke?
Yeah,
Okay,
basically.
good enough.
Okay, item number 6 is Audit Report. Discussion. Okay, item number 7, CM Regent Sun Life renewal rates for July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2025. Any discussion there? I am going to make a motion to table item number 8 because this issue is not completely resolved.
Second? Or did you not make it yet?
No, I'll make that in the next meeting. Can we just pull this? Well, I mean, we would still have to table it now, so that's fine. That's okay, sorry. Okay, so skipping to item number 10, because these are just for our purposes, informational purposes. You have the building activity fund information and the cyber charter expense analysis on there. Are there any questions or concerns about those? Okay.
Next section is buildings and grounds.
We have no items for this month.
Next section is athletics and activities.
Posting of bids for athletic equipment.
Is that just general athletic equipment or anything specific?
Just generalized.
Okay. For next year's, I see.
Correct.
Okay.
Closing exercises.
Citizens' comments.
If Mr. Liz or anyone has something they're holding back, now would be the time before the citizens' comments.
What?
What?
At the last meeting, at this point, the citizens gave their comments, and then Mr. Lisa said, I have something to say. So I'm saying if you would hold the board now to say, hey, let's stick to the agenda. Now, if you want to comment directly to what I say up here tonight, that would be appropriate.
That's okay.
Would you ask her to stop talking? I can't hear myself, and she's,
No, I will not.
well, she's mumbling, and I can't.
Because we're at citizens' comments, please go ahead.
Do you want to speak? Please do.
All right.
I really don't think it's true that some state senator gave Collinsville or any other school district any money, Mr.
I got proof.
I think he gave taxpayer money. Unless he's really, really rich, I don't think it was his money. And taxpayer money.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It came
Mr.
from where
Lizza,
money?
Mr. Lizza, let him speak.
It came from taxpayer money. It wasn't his personal money. He didn't give back his salary. And, you know, when we're talking about grants, we're competing against the prison system, and we don't have public defenders. We don't have people to go in to help old people who need help in their homes right now. I could go on an array of grant people that are out there. The answer is not to get competitive with grants, because these other places don't have public boards that can go out there and grandstand and say we want our grants and get the politicians to give them grants when you can't do it. And I'm not going to go down my list of social needs that need to be addressed besides public education. That's just one of them. So on the health study, I'm sorry that most of it was off mic. Again, if the president could control the meetings and keep on the agenda and bring the people to the microphone, it would be on the record what was said. That, to me, was the most important part of the meeting, but I'm not going to correct you anymore on that. You know, if you can't run the meeting, then move on. But
Just be kind and just,
well, you know,
it's very hard when
do
you.
it month in and month out and year in and year out, and it's not on the record. It hurts. My
We're
comment.
very respectfully sitting here and listening to you, but when you continue to tell someone, run the meeting correctly, if you can't run it correctly, we're sitting here listening to you and being respectful.
Would you think that was correct about not having him at the microphone on that?
I think that you are being disrespectful. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm all right. That's your opinion. Now I'm asking you a question.
Whom did I have not?
No, we're engaged.
I just
Okay,
want
that's
us to
fine, but I'd like
do
to
this
know
stuff
who
and
I
get on.
didn't have at the microphone.
Dr. Clara.
When we were talking, and here's the issue, Mr. Kiefer. I can hear Dr. Clara, so
Yeah.
Go ahead and continue.
That doesn't mean everyone in the room or
You are
anyone
exactly
Go ahead and,
that's not in the room can
you're
hear.
correct.
Okay, well, all right. So on the mental health issue, boy, I got to see my notes because this is an area I can talk in some depth on. And, you know, of course, it would be nice if we were having health and wellness meetings with ESSER's money was financing for this mental health stuff, but you decided that we don't need these things. So let me just say, we don't need the meetings. Let me just make an analogy. Like, instead of being in a meeting where I can explain myself, I got 30 seconds now to come back on a serious subject and speak to 20 people, and most of them are hostile. Let's just use an analogy to get my point across. It's like the dietitian analogy. You can say, yeah, we're going to bring in a psychologist and we're going to bring in a team. And, you know, what we've got is a society of students who have graduated.
Time is up, Mr. Kiefer. Thank you.
I'm going to bring something up. I can talk, right?
No.
No? Okay.
Nope, we're going to move on.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Scotty, no, I have a Scotty spotlight. Are there any more citizens' comments? I'm sorry. Okay. Scotty spotlight.
Okay. We're going to give this a shot here for the first time through. So I met with our administrative staff today, and I really wanted to try to pick something from each building, something exciting that I like to highlight that our kids, our teachers are doing and what's happening that the general public doesn't really get to see. So in our first rendition here, we're going to first start off at the high school. I kind of wanted to highlight that, you know, as I walk by, and Dr. Claire and I have spoken about this a couple times, it's great that he and I get to walk around the buildings and interact with kids and just see exactly what's going on in each of the buildings. Love that part of our job. But over the course of the past couple weeks, I've really started to see classes utilizing that student union space.
Michelle, can you move the solicitor's chair, please, so they can see? Thank you.
Really got to see the students in classes engaged in that space. The kids seem very excited about that space. As you see with some of the pictures, we have, you know, some staff members using the Vibe board in there, instructing the class. And you know, in these pictures, the back wall is black. It doesn't show the pallet wood that is now ready for our military wall of honor project, which is going to be outstanding once done. I know a Spanish class was in there doing presentations and working on videos that they were planning as part of their curriculum. And I also wanted to highlight, I know Mr. Tack spoke about the Bots IQ team. So, near and dear to my heart, I wanted to showcase their hard work. And really, the crux of that isn't necessarily what happens with the machine, but the documentation side of things. So as an engineer, how detailed you have to be in all of your planning, and all of your documentation. And this is the kind of rigor and relevance I love to see, because it's something that they can go ahead and take outside of Southmoreland and use once they're on the job site in terms of their engineering prowess. So kudos to what's happening up there at the high school. In terms of the middle school, what I really love that I've seen is our National Junior Honor Society members have really started to kind of give back. It's a service organization, and you'll hear me speak a lot about how we need to be giving back with those groups. This group is going into SES. The beauty of this campus here is it's connected, so these students can just walk right over, and we have a Reading Buddies program where they go in and engage with students in second and third grade classrooms. We have a Lunch Buddies program where they go in and interact with students during lunch. So they give up of their time where they could be hanging out with their friends here in this cafeteria, but they go over and they hang out with younger students and kind of show them the way, which I think is awesome. And I think it needs to be commended. So wanted to make sure I speak about that. Also at the middle school, we had certain 8th graders that were able to be involved in an anatomy of the human heart seminar, which is something that you typically don't get to see in a normal science classroom. So this was geared towards students who maybe think like they're going down that medical pathway. We talk about career pathways all the time. This is a good start with that. But at the beginning of April, they had a physician that led them through certain components of the heart, vessels, and so forth. And there's a follow-up experience in Pittsburgh on May 26th for the students who really want to continue to learn more, which I think is outstanding. As far as SPC goes, you see a lot of pictures here about some interactive learning that's happening over there. You see Mr. Wagner involved in our autistic support life skills classroom, really engaging the students. I love seeing the kids interacting with their learning. So to me, when I walk past a classroom and they're in a classroom and the kids aren't in their seats and they're engaged with what they're doing, I always say education's messy, and I love it to be messy. So I'm seeing kids out of their seats engaged. Kids, and when I speak to him, these are students that typically, when you're talking about what's going on in their lessons, that are kind of tuned out, not really paying attention too much. But if you're using the same content and doing it in an interactive way, which gets them out of their seats and physically moving around with the content, they are engaged, they are on it, and they want more. So I kind of wanted to highlight what's going on in that room there. And we also wanted to highlight what's going on with the Read Across America Week. You see, we had students from the high school go down. I think I see the Grinch there. As part of that week, we had members from the community come in and read to students in our SPC building, which is awesome. So a thank you to those of you in the community and in the greater region that have come in to help us on those days. Next on the hit list, we have a student athlete that for the first time is participating on our track team, Cody. Cody's rocking and rolling up there. Yesterday set a personal record on the mile in 6 minutes, 41 seconds. I'll tell you right now, I don't think I could run it in 6 minutes, 41 seconds. Maybe when I was in high school, but I don't know about right now. But he bested his time by close to a minute, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what Mr. Haichu shared with us. So I wanted to give him a shout out and say we're proud of him for really going the extra mile of participating and showing us what he can do on the track. I have last one here, and I'll preface this with, by no means did I tell Ms. Guhar-Long there to include pictures of my own kid in the pictures, but for some reason he's plastered in these pictures. But we have a program running at SES called Real World Scholars, and I had to say that really slow because the R and the W, I typically slur them together. But this is a program that talks about entrepreneurship and some projects that students run and get some business experience, real life, which is great. Also, things that you typically don't see in a normal classroom, our kids are rocking and rolling with. And if I'm not mistaken, they are creating keychains of some sort and selling them and doing really well selling them. So when I speak to them, they are really engaged in this project. They are excited that they physically get to make something that other people are buying. And really, it's something that they love to do. So kudos to the staff over at SES that are really making this happen. So principals, thank you for giving me some items here.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Sure.
Mr. Smith will, I'm sorry. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Darn coffee.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What is going on? Okay, roll call.
Dr. Fike?
Here.
Mr. Friend?
Here.
Mrs. Geyer?
Here.
Mr. Lizza?
Here.
Mrs. O'Rear?
Here.
Mr. Polakowski?
Here.
Mr. Shipley is absent. Mrs. Smith?
Here.
Mrs. Williams?
Here.
Caleb is still sitting here.
Mr. Shipley did ask to be excused from this meeting. Citizen comment for agenda items. Okay.
I didn't see it, sorry.
Okay.
Good evening, Jan Kiefer, East Huntington Township. If Mrs. O'Rear happens to me one time during this speech, I'm going to demand that you censor her, that you don't do that to the public as an elected official.
And we're not, I'm
And when
going
talking,
to remind you that we're not calling out board members during this.
so let's talk about the behavior health of the students. What I would expect that a child is exposed to by the time they graduate is the foundation so that they can have good behavior and good behavior health. And that would not be the road that you've taken so far that's given us this world of addictions to the media, the social media, the drugs, the food. And I'd like to also point your attention that we're not talking about the mind when we're talking about mental health. We're talking about mind and body stuff. Mind-body medicine has been cliche now for generations. When the child leaves Southmoreland High School, they statistically don't know how to eat, they don't know how to sleep, they don't know about proper environmental awareness of the things that they're around. They know secondhand cigarette smoke, and they know these things. But what you've done has been a total failure in my mind, and that's borne out by the statistics, not just the COVID statistics. So let me just be positive here and say, if I was a student graduating now, I would be able to say, look, here's what happened in my life. When I was a young adult, COVID came in, which has, and you can disagree with me, but I don't think you're going to want to argue or discuss, but COVID has come in and it has been categorically shown to be wrong, that what they said about the vaccinations, about the cause, the roots, the treatments, and all this thing. It was just a crime on humanity that we've never seen before in any, in 1,000 years, let alone in 100 years. And a student has to be able to critically look at this stuff if they're going to be or mentally adjusted to the world. If they're going to say, we're at war with Russia and over there, and that's okay, we're not talking about that. I don't see any students mentally healthy enough to be good citizens. There's no student movement. There's no students that come up here and say, hey, we just got screwed out of our high school experience. We're looking at an economy that's off the rails, and the students they're nowhere. When I was younger, students were active and they were aware of these things. Nowadays, we just don't see that. When I look at the statistics of students on behavioral drugs, and I look at the damage that those behavioral drugs do, that should be public up here on the public forum. And it's not. You want to bury that. I think that one of the biggest reasons students are so maladjusted is because they're forced into public education, government education.
Hey, before we get started, I just want to say something. There's an accusation made in the prior meeting. I think sometimes it's really hard to disseminate as a board member when we're moving from meeting to meeting to meeting what has occurred in public and what has occurred in executive session. And my statements last meeting were not made in a public meeting, therefore did not violate the Sunshine Act. We had gone into executive or recess or whatever we went into, and that's where those comments were made. The camera was not on. The public was not in the room.
You said that when I was responding to that censure.
Yes, and
Publicly.
that was not public.
Point of order,
We
Ms.
moved-
It was my response
We
was
moved-
public.
On the order.
We're not, I have a point of order. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, moving on. Excuse me?
I expect nothing less than that from you.
I'm sure you wouldn't, but here's the thing. There is a video. Go back and watch it because you will see that was not done in the public eye.
You're as innocent of the new fallen snow, Michelle.
Can we just stop? Can we go on with the meeting, please?
Next section is minutes.
Minutes for the March 9th, 2023 discussion meeting. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve the minutes of March 9th, 2023 voting meeting. You need a
Second.
second? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next section is reports.
Superintendent information?
I have no further information.
Thank you. Solicitor information?
I just wanted to respond, since there have been concerns brought up about the fees incurred for legal representation from my office, that my office prides itself on high-quality legal service. Our rates are highly competitive. If the board is unsatisfied with those rates, then we would ask the board to discuss seeking new counsel.
Thank you. Anything else? Business manager, transportation director information?
Nothing further at this time.
Old business? I'm sorry.
Old business.
Make a motion to remove from the table resolution number 2022-2023-04.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item number 2, I make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-2023-04. You need a second?
Second.
I want it to be pulled for discussion.
Discussion?
I was deprived of my right to even respond to this, so I won't even try again because of the treatment, the behavior of this board. I am giving my response to Mrs. Terrazan so that you will have it, and I would request it to be put in the minutes. Vote.
Just a legal question. Can something be put in the minutes if can just a document?
No, I think it should be discussed. Unless the board would consent.
No.
You want it discussed, or do you want it?
No, it doesn't need to be included.
If something's going to be put in the minutes, it should be publicly talked about.
Correct.
It was, Nicole, I tried.
Well, I'm saying now.
You weren't here, Nicole, I tried.
Michelle, I think you.
Right, I'm just,
read the resolution.
but I'm not talking about necessarily what anybody says. I'm talking
I'm not
about if
gonna have
something
people
is
screaming
in the
and pounding
minutes,
the
it
gavel
must be
again,
discussed
Kristen.
in a
Once is
public forum.
So I think there's a difference between defending what has been said and defending it with lies against other people, and also discussing things that occurred in executive session, which is part of what the censure is.
Here we go again. Will you please vote? I said I don't want to be subjected to this kind of ignorant behavior again. Please vote.
Okay, I'm not being ignorant, so I am
No, you're
a
not.
no for anything being put in the minutes that I am present for if it is not discussed, because I don't know what's in it.
So would we prefer, Dr. Fike, would you prefer to discuss what's in your letter and that discussion would be in the minutes,
You want
or
me to read the whole thing again?
Or pull your
that is
letter.
up to you?
Read the whole thing.
I want it placed in the minutes because I will not be subjected to the treatment that I received.
And no offense, I won't be subjected to something being put in the minutes that I am present for that I did not
It's
talk
okay.
about.
Throw it in the garbage. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to be subjected to that kind of treatment again.
The hell?
Okay, so are you pulling the letter or are you discussing it?
Can you?
Okay, so
ever-
there is, the letter will not be part of the minutes. at this point if she does not wish to discuss it for it to be part of the minutes. So I have a motion and I have a second. Does anybody have any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Next section is policies.
Make a motion to approve policy items number 1 and 2. I need a second.
Second.
Discussion?
The information we have out there is incomplete.
That was, I think, going to be mine.
Aside from, I'm going to add your description for column for Group B and Group C.
I'm not going to vote on it this way.
Any other discussion?
What are you adding? I think I missed what she had asked you to add.
The request was made to include a description of what groups would be Group B and what groups would be Group C.
Okay.
And those are part of the administrative.
Those are part of the
regulations.
administrative regs, which was aligned with how it was
Before.
before.
Okay.
But I can add it to that fee schedule for sure.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Next section is personnel.
So I make a motion to approve personnel items 1 through 5. Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? Wait 1 second because we need to go back. I'm so sorry. We
1 to 4.
need to pull item number 5 from this
That's correct.
and vote on it separately.
Yes.
Second.
So I need a motion to amend the motion, which would be to pull item number 5 from the motion.
Motion.
I need a
granted.
second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I didn't know how.
Okay, and now I need I'm making a motion to approve items number 1, 2, 3, and 4. I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now I need to make an amended motion on item number 5. This would just be on the rates. And we would need this would be approved so long as there is an MOU authorizing these rates through at least the end of their contract,
Through the end of their contract.
the end of
yes.
this contract.
Whose contract?
The SEA
And the
para
paraprofessionals.
agreement.
Okay. Moving forward.
Just vote for that next month then?
I think they need to know that this is the rate so that we can work on the MOU
I see.
and so that we can start planning for ESY.
Okay.
Because I think next month
Okay,
would
so
be too late.
I would, can I say I second the motion to approve this rate as long as it follows with the MOU of stating,
Yes.
was it going to state?
It's going to state that this is through the end of their current agreements or contract.
Then I second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Next year.
2025, I think it was.
June 30th. The paras expires this year. So I can't see that being a problem with that rate because it's going to be time and a half. Okay. Item number 7, confidential administrative assistant to the superintendent and the school board HR specialist. I make a motion that we approve the hiring of Lori McTavish. I need a second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Next section is education.
So I make a motion to approve education items number 1 through 12. I need a second.
Second.
Do we need to make a motion first to pull number 5 to amend that motion?
Oh, yep. So I make a motion to, do I have a second on this already? So I need a motion to amend the motion,
Second.
which would be to pull item number 5. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so we're going to make a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 6 through 12. I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
You didn't ask if anything was pulled for discussion, right? Okay.
We just did. We pulled number 5.
No, I had another one.
Okay. Any discussion on items 1 through 4 and then 6 through 12?
I read item number 4, and I found a lot of discrepancies in there that I did not think were correct or appropriate.
Go ahead. I asked about this in the last meeting to discuss this. And I even said, because this is important to Southmoreland and our plan. Go ahead. Do you have discussions?
No, I just said, my discussion is, I read it, I found a number of discrepancies, and there were some errors that I thought existed, as it is right now.
And you don't want to discuss them?
It's 45 pages long.
Is there stuff that that needs to be changed in it before we approve it?
You're going to approve it anyhow, Christie, so I don't care.
I don't think that's necessarily true. If there's stuff that we need to
I
change.
think it should be approved accurately. If you have concerns, then they should be brought forth.
Makes any difference.
I think that what you have to say makes a difference right now. So
I
if
don't
you
think,
want.
I don't think
Okay.
it does.
All right.
I don't think it does.
All right.
Because if I say it, it's automatically wrong.
All right.
So I'm not going to
Okay.
bother, I'm not going to bother you with it. I'm just going to vote no on that one.
So I have a motion and a second for items 1 through 4 and 6 through 12. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No on 4.
Next section is finance.
Wait, do we have to do 5?
Sorry,
Oh,
we
I'm
have to
sorry.
do 5.
We do have to go back to
So I
5.
need to make a motion to amend. I need to make a motion to amend item number.
Second.
Item number 5.
5.
Services for cyber.
I have one for Tony.
Do we need a motion to adjourn for your executive over there? Everybody, I need a motion for executive session. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second.
What are you going to discuss?
To
I
amend.
started, and then there was sidebar, and I.
Motion to amend. We're good?
I can't hear.
Okay, we're on.
Okay, I need a motion to go back into session.
So move.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'd like to apologize. I used the wrong language. I needed a recess. We did not have an executive session. Okay, so I am on item number 5. I would like to make a motion to amend the motion, which would be to move SES Mr. Craig up to Schedule 1, and everything else would remain the same. I need a second.
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 Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Mrs. Tarzan, I'm abstaining from that vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
We need a motion to approve it. You amended it, now we need.
Okay, I need a motion now to approve the motion, which is with Schedule 1, SES, Polakowski, and Mr. Craig. It would leave Schedule 2, SPC, SMS, and SHS for Wagner, Morris, and Farrell. I need a second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm abstaining, Peggy, again.
Thank you.
Bro.
Okay. Now we are on to finance.
Like to make a motion to approve finance items 1 through 7. The agenda does say items 1 through 8. I'm going to make a motion separately to table item number 8.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? I'd like to make a motion to table item number 8. I need a second.
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 Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Next section is buildings and grounds.
We have no items,
Next section is athletics activities.
and we have no items there either.
We have one.
Oh,
The
sorry.
posting of bids.
Sorry, posting of bids for athletic equipment.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Can I make a comment real quick before we go to closing exercises? I really like that Scotty spotlight.
Wait
I
one
think-
second. So we approved this, right? All those in favor, aye.
My bad.
Opposed?
My bad.
Okay.
Aye.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, so before we hit up closing exercises, I really like that Scotty spotlight. Do you think that's something we could maybe do before we hit citizen comments? Like, address the Scotty, like your Scotty spotlight, and then do citizens comments, and then do adjournment?
We'll do that.
Yeah, I can do whatever.
Okay. I just think, like, if we do citizens comments and it gets a little hectic at times, like it normally does, like, it kind of takes away from, like, people get agitated and flustered, and then it takes away from what, the good stuff about the Scotty Spotlight. So, okay, cool. Thank you.
Anyone else? Citizens' comments?
I don't need one because
We all have, Jan Kiefer, East Huntington Township, we all have to be able to take criticism in a good spirit. When you're in the atmosphere of public education, you know, it's really important to overemphasize positive encouragement for children. I understand that. But we have to keep a perspective on that. And when you come up like I do and come from a social critic's perspective, it's immediately perceived as inappropriate. And really, to me, it's the only constructive way that I like to work with, and I think that we need it. We spent a lot of time on money issues tonight, and I don't think the easers and the programs are going to quit. I think they're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. We've become a country of socialist programs, more or less. We're bailing out student loans and banks and all these other things, farmers and food people and energy companies. The way things are going, the road that's ahead of us, it's pretty clear that you're running on a fiat budget here, so to speak. You're going to do what you do every year, but when the shoe drops and inflation goes up 20%, or COVID hits, or the war starts, or the banks crash, or whatever, it all gets thrown out the window. And we have to find some way to take care of our children, be it educating in the buildings, or, as COVID taught us, somehow we see to their mental health and their socialization needs. And again, we didn't get that done before, and I'm not seeing why anything that the students and the teachers and the community are saying would indicate that we're going to change any direction in awareness. Our country is bankrupt. We're in war. We have international conflicts that are unfathomable 10 years ago, and we just we have a student body in a town and young parents that seem to think that if they watch Fox News and then, well, they've got the whole picture, and they don't believe all the CNN stuff. And I don't think we do that. We all have our own news feeds now, and we all have our own realities. But the fact is that society is dead in the water as far as standing up and saying anything about the terrible atrocities that are coming on to us. We have millions and millions of people around the world that are permanently disabled because of the pharmaceutical and the Department of Defense program. We have an FDA that the former FDA commissioner himself said has nothing to do with the safety of food and drugs. It's just a puppet organization. If we can't get past this idealization that our country and our government schools are all truistic and just doing fine, and that we can just sit here and not do anything as citizens, we're going to all march into a complete loss of freedoms. And if you don't think that that is real and true, and you want to think, oh, his big doomsday theories and all that, then just create a forum and show me what you think, because I don't presume to know where you go on all these issues. But I do know that you don't have any public voice about it. None of you.
Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Real leadership.